Good day, dear student madam. My name is Bohdan Fashev. Today I'm going to use some personal, let's say, opinions about teaching online, pros and cons, and what can you get out of it. Um, First of all, you shall understand that online teaching is, of course, not so long term as you know just the usual teaching because basically online world doesn't have that much in length, so we cannot say that. Um, Everything is as developed as in the usual teaching. Let's say if you are teaching ESL, online teaching is still a big question because it has a lot of pros and cons. So let's first talk about the positive sides of it. Of course, it undoubtedly gives you the opportunity to teach remotely. That means that you can find customers online, and you can find them, from different continents. You can be a teacher teaching from Poland, from some small village, but teaching to Mexican students, and they would send you money. So that is not a problem for you at all. However, strangely enough, it has a lot of drawbacks also. Let's say, how would you find the customers online if you are not in the school? And so on. But later we are going to speak about that. Secondly, one of the biggest positive moments about that is that something new is there and you have the opportunity to reteach yourself some things, because when you're teaching for years in one school with the same teachers and you're bored, and after that you're doing that from week to week, from month to month, from year to year, after some time you really get somehow into the mode of a robot, right? You know where do you elicit, how do you do that, what words do you need. But with online teaching, everything should be very different. And even if the program like Zoom lets you elicit it, still, you can't really say that this experience will not require restructuring your lessons, maybe rewriting some of your lesson plans. Basically, this is a very big step forward to good lessons. So why not try it, right? Also, it is an opportunity to gain more students. If you're teaching individual classes or just usual classes with a lot of students, if you taught, let's say, business English, it meant that you needed to travel a lot, as I do usually, from one part of the city, from one company to the other. Of course, it gives you a very cool perk, like you don't rent the office, right? And you do not need to put the students in a very big office because you need to have enough space, enough room for everyone. But on the other side, you would spend sometimes I even spend on Wednesday, for example, usually I spend 3 hours just commuting to this office or that office. That's not a big problem, but still you waste a lot of time, and you could do 2 big lessons for quite a good money online if you wisely build your let's say online teaching process. As well, there are some ecological reasons. Usually for my real lessons in the real classroom I use a lot of handouts, a lot of giveaway materials, because I think that it's good to have something hard. And on the other hand, I'm against cutting trees, so I'm kind of in dilemma, right, what to do. Online teaching kills it, and you actually need to accommodate yourself to the new situation, to the new situation. And you just need to learn how to create QR codes, how to open some questions in presentation instead of giving them paper, because you cannot send them paper by post or something. Or so you should try to learn how to use Google Disk and so on. So even for, let's say, older teachers, that's a perfect opportunity to learn something new, and maybe to advance a bit and master a bit their technological skills. So I found it very interesting. I've learned Google in classrooms, I've learned some features in Zoom, I've learned Skype. Now it's actually much better than it was before when I used it 3 or 4 years ago, when I had also some time span when I used to teach online. Also, we shall say that it also raises your ability to study, because after that, when you launch this study process, you understand that you can study yourself online as well. However, of course, there's huge positive moments about online teaching. As I have just mentioned, so they do have, of course, some drawbacks. And what are them? First of all, some teachers and some students really don't like online world and they cannot really learn it. There are actually very simple reasons for that. First of all, they do not feel as if they feel the person, they want to feel like, community, they want to feel the team. And from their experience, from their perception, they cannot really get it by online conference room, by online classroom. However, I would not agree with that. Let's say in Zoom you can build this. If every person in the community that you are sharing the conference with, they have good enough quality of connection. And yeah, this is a prerequisite. Usually people didn't like online communication because it was faulty. It had a bad bad picture, sound delays, picture delays. It was cut from time to time, the internet was broken and so on. I think that was the major reason that people really didn't like it. So now if you want to be an online teacher, please buy a good technology. Be it iPad, be it some other company, I don't care, but basically care about the quality of a picture. Without it, it will be broken, I promise. It would be very hard to conduct more or less normal lesson. Then what can be also a problem is that you can have a real difficulty with the attraction of students. So marketing would become your job. And honestly, without the knowledge in this field, without the thorough understanding how the processes are working in this field, it would be a very big problem as they are for me, or better, let's say, as they were for me, because after I gained some key students and they would say their colleagues, their subordinates or their bosses, after that they would come to me and we would work together. So that would be brilliant. But generally, it is very hard to find the first, the second, the third, the fifth student online, because there is no valid confirmation that this teacher is good and that is not. Because if you visit a real school, this is kind of beneficiary, because honestly, no one is interested in having a bad teacher in their community. They would care about him or her so that they would grow at least, or they would fire them whatsoever. But in online world, you can write everything about you. So now these platforms started, good platforms I'm saying, they have started to do a threshold they have done a threshold, that's true. And you need to have a CELTA certificate, let's say, to be enrolled to some normal platform with a more or less good payment. Also, the biggest drawback about online teaching is that people do not understand the difference between English teacher and English native, and they substitute these two notions. They think that, well, why shall I pay, let's say, $15 per hour, this wage, to the Polish, to Ukrainian, to Russian, to Kazakh, to whatsoever, Arab, right? If I could pay 20, just $5 more to the native speaker, and I would have a conversation with him or her, maybe she would lack skills in that field, but nevertheless, I would speak with a native. Why is it a problem? Yes, honestly, you could do that for $20, but also this is a big problem that $20 for that person in the UK or America would not be so big money. As for teaching, this is the first thing. So what is the motivation? Is that good enough, and so on? Secondly, teaching skills and knowledge of language, of course it is connected, and teaching what you don't know, of course, doesn't make any sense and doesn't correspond with each other. But nevertheless, I would call it a bit strange that the person that only is native in some language would teach it without problems. I'm absolutely sure that people are born teachers, and if you do not meet a teacher, you would just have a holder of the language, right? And you could have a subtle conversation about something, but it's not about teaching. Teaching is about algorithms of giving and putting some information into your mind. And putting information into your mind is an extremely long let's not tell it long, but let's say it's like good driving. It's like driving well. You need to know how to drive. You need to know the technical characteristics of the car, or in our case, the person. Then you need to know how to drive the fastest way, how to drive without any psychological or mental problems afterwards. It's an issue because if you start talking with a, let's say, native, you would, I don't know, you would just, okay, maybe for upper intermediate it's super, but I'm sure like for all the levels prior to intermediate, that would be kind of a problem. It depends on you, but in 80% that's what I've seen so far. Continuing our conversation, I think that platforms and actually this marketing thing is the hardest. If you have some teaching skills, of course. If you don't have, you have two major things to solve. You need first of all to learn how to teach, and secondly to find a platform to put your name, your experience, and your effort in. And yeah, so if you don't have Sauda, if you are not native, it becomes really hard because you also compete with the guys from the US, from the guys from Canada, and the UK, and all the other countries around the world. So of course, if you are a star, enjoy it. But if you are not a star, or at least people do not understand it yet because you don't have the certification, yeah, carry on. Because let's say now in the current time periods, here this is the only option. However, I would not recommend you to go for some cheap sites and send 1 million applications. You can do that. I also did it at some point of time, but understood that it's easier to go to the networking surroundings where people really need it. Maybe to some business networking, they understand, they want good English, and they go for that. But networking, it's up to you. It's up to you. Of course, as I have mentioned once again, get the certificate when it's possible. When the situation, this virus gets easier, I think that it would be a perfect idea for you to gather this 1,000 US dollars or euro or whatever currency is it, and go into SAUTA course. That would just skyrocket your teaching career. That would make it better. And after that, if you, let's say, wanted to move abroad for some time, that would be possible actually, and much more possible than without this certificate, because education programs in different education institutes of different countries differ a lot. So enjoy your online teaching and see you in the next video soon. Goodbye, cheers.